So, welcome Mr. J. Lakhani and welcome Annelies. They are with us today for this last session of the day. Mr. J. Lakhani is qualified as theoretical physicist specializing in quantum physics, but devoted last 30 years linking ideas at cutting edge of science with deeper vision of Hinduism. And Annelies is a PhD student in cognitive neurosciences in Stockholm. She specializes in magnetic resonance imaging research in patients with cortisol-related diseases. She has been meditating for a few years now in Heartfulness and is very keen on gaining a deeper understanding of our brains and the universe. Welcome. Welcome, Mr. J. Lakhani and Annelies.
Thank you.
Yes. Can you see me the right way around? Because I see you sideways.
No.
I'm wrong way. Am I the right way? Okay, I'm fine. So
I think you need. No, you need to flip your phone around, I think.
Okay, hang on. Is that better?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, I always get it wrong way around. Okay, the sound is a little bit tricky because it's like electronic, tingling sound, but we'll do our best.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Benedetta, for introducing us. And thank you, Mr. Lakhani, for being here. I'm going to guide this interview or question and answer session. And I would like to just say I'm so honored to do this. I find this the most interesting topic in the world. So I'm very happy that I can have this conversation with you. And I would like to start with just giving a very small background about myself and my perspective on science and spirituality so that we can make a bridge into the questions for you. So I feel that like ever since I was a kid, and I think very many people have experienced this moment when you're like 10 years old and suddenly you look up at the sky, at the stars, and you realize how amazing it is that there is something instead of nothing. And that darkness that is there, is that also something, or is it maybe nothing? And I just remember being 10 years old and thinking that this was so fascinating, and I wanted to discover more about who we are, where do we come from, what's the universe about, what does it mean? You know, this exploring all these questions. But then I went on to study cognitive neuroscience, and it's like all this wonder about the universe, it gets shrunken and molded and squeezed into the box of the scientific paradigm, which is only focusing on that which we can measure, and only that. And that which we can measure about ourselves is like our brain activity, maybe our genes. I mean, it's all incredibly amazing and interesting how it works, but it made me feel like, oh, is this all that we are? Like just the brain cells and maybe our awareness and consciousness, it just comes from, you know, the communication between the brains, and like, poof, then we are there. Okay, it's a little bit underwhelming. But then I started to meditate, and this worldview started to reverse again. Like literally the energy flow started to reverse again. And I realized there is so much, that maybe there is actually more than I had first thought. But it was very hard to open up my mind to this different worldview, that maybe there is something outside of the matter. Maybe there is something more to it. But when you've been so much trained to think only in measurements, it was very difficult to let go of this view. And this is why I find it so amazing that you are aiming to make this bridge, not opposing our mind, but using our mind, and not, instead of fighting with ourselves, using ourselves and integrating these views. So this is a little bit my story, my evolution so far. Obviously, I'm a bit a beginner in everything. So my first question to you would be, actually, because we have named this session Spiritual Humanism. Can you maybe explain to us what you mean by spiritual humanism, and why it matters to us to have a spiritual view of humanity?
First of all, Annelies, it's a real pleasure to get in touch with you again. It's a real pleasure, because when I meet youngsters like you who are actually clear thinkers, in fact, what gave you away straight away in the first sentence you said is, when you looked up, you said, why something rather than nothing? Now, you see, it may sound like a very casual comment, but it's not casual at all. The whole idea of spirituality is to be establishing something. We exist, existence, we exist. And that is the most important aspect to a spiritual experience. So at a very young age of 10, you already seem to be hitting jackpots. So be it. The thing is, this is a very interesting exploration. And let me tell you my journey. You see, I come from a Hindu background, a very traditional Hindu background. And I was studying physics at Imperial College, and I specialized in quantum physics under Sir Roger Penrose, who is perhaps the #1 physicist in quantum physics in the world today. And I was absolutely thrilled by what I discovered. So let me tell you my journey. You see, the world has been doing extremely well on the paradigm of materialism. Everything for the last 2,000 years, the most durable science we have is materialism, trying to explain the whole of this creation as matter and its properties, these epiphenomena. So the world has been working extremely well for 2,000 years, thinking in terms of matter and its attributes, like electron, proton, whatever. So it has worked extremely well. It has given us long life. It has allowed us to send a man to the moon and bring him back. So it really allows us to harness nature in no uncertain terms. Because it has been such a durable exercise, such a very rewarding exercise, that we are now fixated on it. We can't get out of the materialistic box. This is what's happening now. Now, what is happening is this. Through the integrity of science itself, look, I'm not floating away, hippie or something. I'm saying through the integrity of very central science, we are now discovering, without any hesitation, a deeper dimension to reality. If I can use simple language, deeper dimension to reality. So even though matter seems to be very exciting and very wonderful ploy we used to make so much progress, through the integrity of science, we are now finding a deeper dimension. So what deeper dimension, Mr. Lakhani? Is it the fifth dimension? No. The deeper dimension is non-material. Now, this is fascinating because, as you said, we have been weaned on materialism. We can only think in terms of matter. And suddenly, in the 1920s, we discovered this phenomena called quantum. We said, oh dear, the fathers of quantum physics said, even though we are fixated on matter, what we are finding very exciting and a bit worrying is the underpinning to reality is not matter. You say, if it's not matter, we are standing on matter, we are made of matter. What do you mean when it's something different? You see, everything is matter, so yeah, what are you on about? And yet, the fathers of quantum physics, Erwin Schrödinger and Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg were very clear about it. They said, it's a very interesting situation. They said matter is if you like, a paradox. Underpinning is clean and perfection itself, correct to the 10th decimal point. But the world we encounter, the material world, is a paradox. In the words of Erwin Schrödinger, it is an appearance. You say appearance, we are living on an appearance. We are made of appearance and everything is appearance. They say yes. But it's called empirical science. They throw it in my face. Empirical, we love empirical science, Mr. Lakhani. So I am very good at replying. I say, no, hang on. Here is one pebble, empirical. Yes, I touch it, I hold it. Yes, and there's another pebble. And I click them together, click, 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 and I hear a sound. Oh, this empirical sense evidence, sense data. But then the physics is saying this pebble and this pebble are both appearances validating each other. They are both appearances just validating each other. That's what we call empirical world. Suddenly we discover a different dimension to reality which cannot be avoided. So the scientists are very keen to avoid this kind of non-material approach to physics, because physics means physical and we are saying non-physical. So they are struggling big time and they have really thrown in the towel. This is the real situation. And there was a big tussle between, look, some of the most kind of mature scientists, forget the three fathers of quantum physics, like Einstein had great difficulty in stepping out of the material box. He fought the idea of quantum until he passed away. He was fighting it throughout. And the Solvay conference, every time he threw in a challenge to Niels Bohr came back with a sharp response, which won the day. So this idea that the world is made of matter is now under severe threat. Now, why am I so keen to impress this idea? Materialism has done its job, done very well. But now through the integrity of materialism, through material science, we're discovering, we are looking at the abyss, a deep dimension to reality, which is non-material. But you say, what are we on about, Mr. Lakhani? What is this? You see, when we actually look at physical sciences, when you look at the very smaller than the smallest at the quantum level, when you look at the larger than the largest at the cosmic level, when we look at the very complex like neuroscience, or when we look at subjective, at all these four places, physical sciences immediately show their limitation. They show their frayed edges. They're not clear cut. So this is why when you look at this kind of relative world, things seem to be okay. But when you look at the deeper dimension, the smaller than the smallest, the bigger than the biggest, the most complex, or the subjective, at all these four areas, physical sciences crack up, dramatically crack up. And this is what we are discovering through the findings of quantum. Why am I so keen? Look, majority of youngsters today are moving away from monotheism in a dramatic manner. When I go to many schools, I say, you pick your name as a Hindu or a Christian, but do you actually believe this enterprise? There's a supreme personality called monotheist God. Hello, I'm here, and I created you, and I look after you. Do you believe in that? They say, no. I say, why not? They say, just look around. The suffering you see in the living kingdom, not the human kingdom, the living kingdom, animals, insects, whatever, the suffering you see where trillions of living things are killing each other, biting each other while they're alive, eating each other while they're alive. And if you tell me this is a gracious God who created the world, you must fight this guy. He's not right. He's a really horrible man. See, this honesty of clear thinking youngster of today. So they are running away from monotheism. So where do they end up? They end up with humanism. There seems to be the nice place to kind of hide. Say, oh, no religion now, no more religion. Be like humanist. It's a very interesting, kind of evolution. Because look, if I ask a youngster today, do you believe in God? 90% from my experience will say, no. I say, in that case, do you believe in yourself? And do you know what they'll say? 90%. Yes, of course. What do you think? I believe in myself. I see the transition has taken place. Not searching for a resolution of human condition in the heaven with monotheist God, but seeking a resolution of your human condition within yourself. This is the transition that's taking place very naturally. And this is what spiritual humanism is all about. So this idea of focusing on humanity is perhaps more important. The only problem with humanism is this. They are still stuck in this highly materialistic box. They can't get out of it, including my own professor, Roger Penrose. He only thinks in material terms. So he can't step out of the material box. And most of the major scientists are struggling to get out of the material box. Some are very brave and say, we'll sit on the fence. We think there's something more to us. But majority is still stuck in a materialistic box. The paradigm has worked so well, it is difficult to, in a way, jump out of it. Whenever a paradigm works so well, you're going to get fixated on it. Like all of us get fixated. All these gizmos work on this kind of physical sciences. So we are fixated on it. And yet the physics of today is saying, no, deeper dimension. And this is where we sit at the moment. So I am pushing the humanist log. I say, we are in the right direction. Humanism is very focused on. But if you think humanism is just, if you like, an output of matter, just some lumps of carbon that got wound up through accidental evolution, as Richard Dawkins is suggesting, then you lost the plot. We agree we are coming out of the animal kingdom. We are extension of the animal kingdom. But if Richard Dawkins says we are extension of the material kingdom that he insists on, I say, no way. There's something much more than matter that is manifesting through this material frame. It requires a material frame, it requires a brain, and yet something popping out here is non-material, manifesting itself through this human frame. And this is called spiritual humanism. Please ask me some question, Annelies.
Yes,
sorry,
yes, yes.
I get carried away.
I find it all very, very fascinating. There are so many questions that needs to be answered, really. So this the idea of a spiritual human experience, I find it very, very beautiful and very relevant. But it seems to also be dependent on the assumption of consciousness. And there we have another huge question. The consciousness, what is it really? Because I sometimes confuse consciousness with awareness. I think many people see it as the awareness, the experience, the movie in the head. But I feel that if there is that consciousness in your view might mean something different.
And at least you are the PhD student in neuroscience, so you should not put me on the spot like this, but I don't mind. I'll carry you.
Sorry.
Okay. Look, you see, as I said, the real problems in sciences are when you look at the very big, the very large, the very small, and the subjective. Who is making sense of the world? This is where the word consciousness appears. Now, in the basic living things, there is no consciousness, but you can say there is cognition. They're aware of their environment. They can move to the heat or the light. It's visible in all the living kingdom. So at the very rudimentary level, you see awareness, or if you like, this idea of being cognition. They're able to cognize their environment. That's the starting point. But as living things become more and more complex, this awareness becomes much more heightened, and we call it consciousness. We give it a heightened state, consciousness. We are conscious. Now, I had this kind of dialogue with many scientists, neuroscientists as well. And I once asked Susan Greenfield, Dame Susan Greenfield, I said, what is consciousness? Which slice of the brain produces it? You are the best neuroscientist in Cambridge. Come on, give me an answer. She said, we have no clue, Mr. Lakhani. Where it comes from, there is no slice of the brain that produces it. Where it comes from, we have no clue. What it's all about, we have no idea how to define it, describe it. We seem to have it and seem to work. Simple as that. It gives us access to reality. So you can see there's a big black hole in neuroscience regarding what is the nature of consciousness. Now, the two ways scientists try to avoid this answer, and you would have discovered this by now, is either they'll say, we'll sort it out later on, just calm down. Don't be so worked up. Calm down, we'll give you an answer in days to come. We'll give answered so many questions, this will be sorted out in days to come. This is not good enough for me. It's a cop-out. The second way, again, to get away is like Daniel Dennett. He'll say, he'll produce huge jungle of jargon, computer lingo, linguistic employees, and say, it's a mismatch between the hardware and the software of the brain that creates the illusion of consciousness. There's no reality to it, just illusion. And my challenge would be very simple. If it's an illusion, if consciousness is an illusion, everything we are conscious about must be super illusion. Why should we bother with anything then? So this is not right. So they have not really answered the question. They're trying to kind of push it aside and kind of put it under the carpet. But it is not going away. Just as in the physics, quantum cannot go away. In neuroscience, consciousness cannot go away. In a way, this is how spiritual humanism makes itself visible. Because it says, really speaking, underpinning to us is something that is dramatic. Is essentially, we can use the loose word, spiritual, seriously misused by everybody. Our underpinning is spiritual. But Mr. Lakhani, what is the spiritual? It reveals itself through this human frame as consciousness. See, through the process of consciousness. So it's already in a kind of percolating through our human frame, which is material, yet it percolates as consciousness. That's why you can't pinpoint it to any slice of the brain. So our spiritual dimension becoming revealed through the concept of consciousness, which is in a way a puzzle for modern neuroscience, because it has to be a puzzle. Because if you can make it turn it into a material phenomena, it is no longer spiritual, it is material. We go back to the material box, and you can't catch it like that. So this is where we stay. But let me tell you why it's such a powerful idea. And even though we're kind of discussing this in a very minor platform, I'm telling you very truthfully, even though we seem like minor kind of players in the field, in days to come, in this decade, this idea that I'm suggesting and that we're exploring together, this idea of what is underpinning to reality, which is non-material, what is underpinning to living things, this consciousness, these ideas will become mainstream in days to come, within a decade. You can't stop it. The floodgates of kind of breaking free out of this materialistic box is there. They're pushing it around. Whenever a paradigm is challenged, the first thing is to ignore it. That's the situation at the moment. When I talk like this to a scientist, they say, Mr. Lakhani, go away. The only spirit we believe in comes in bottles at Christmas time. Go away. I say, I'm not going to go away because the spirit I'm talking about gives you a bigger kick. Watch it.
Yes.
So the spirit that is, this is unstoppable. So this now, in a way, they're still trying to hold the floodgates and not allow materialism to kind of collapse. And there's a huge lobby to make sure. In fact, I continue to challenge the chief philosopher of British Humanist Association. I said, you must move from this highly materialistic humanism to spiritual humanism, then you'll get the youth to join up with you. Otherwise, they think you are a stodgy, you are lifeless. They say, no, we are not lifeless. I say, you are lifeless. You are saying you're a lump of carbon, that's lifeless. So this is the ongoing story, and it will continue. But the thing is, the floodgates have opened up. The only way modern neuroscience can progress on the issue of consciousness, on the issue of quantum in physics, is by embracing a deeper dimension to reality, which is essentially non-material. Nothing to be fearful about. It's a very exciting situation. And take some more questions, Annelies.
It is very exciting, but I'm a little bit like, I'm struggling to see like how the bridge will actually be made, because you can always come up with other explanations. Like my yoga teacher once said, like, yeah, you can explain away everything. So even if it does, if our current observations don't match with the mathematical models or of physics, then how would you can have a spiritual explanation of the observations, but is it ever going to be proven? How would that work if you cannot make the measurements of something because it's nothing?
Annelies, if it was possible to measure what we call spiritual, then it is no longer spiritual. So
yeah,
people
exactly.
say, Mr. Lakhani, I want empirical evidence about spirituality. I say that's the big problem, because if it becomes possible to give empirical evidence to spirituality, it is no longer spiritual. It becomes material. You turn into empirical world, fine. But there is no way. In fact, every time you try and define spirituality, you will fail. I notice this. For example, you'll meet a lot of youngsters who are very keen on, art and music and whatever, love and all that. And if you ask them, please articulate, tell us what is this love, they'll struggle. It's not simple thing to kind of articulate, because it is showing the underpinning as the spirit, difficult to articulate, difficult to capture through linguistic ploys. And the same is true with quantum, and the same is true with consciousness. So in a way, in almost everything that we find endearing in human beings, whether it's in the field of science, which I love to talk about, or in the field of arts and music and dance and poetry, everything is endearing about us doesn't come out of matter. So I tell materialist humanists, look, it's nice to be, focused on humanity, but the reason why humanity is important is because these wonderful endearing features we possess reflect a deeper dimension which doesn't come out of matter, doesn't come out of electrons. And it's necessary for you to embrace the deeper vision. It cannot be articulated, it cannot be turned into a material phenomena, it cannot be measured. This is not its weakness, this is strength. Suppose you can measure it, so that spirituality is 6 inches long. You killed it. It has to be, completely unclassified. And that is how it is. Only sorry, go on.
So I feel that because of this issue of not being measurable, I feel that we actually need to have our own experience of it in order to be able to open up our minds and incorporate it in a different worldview. What do you think about this? Because I feel with the experience there is also like this problem of trusting our own perception. Because if you're still stuck in the material view and you have a deep experience of the spirit, it could still be fitting as a hallucination produced by the brain. So I don't know. What do you think that it will be the bridge between the two, the personal experience? Or?
Yes. In fact, look, one of the beautiful aspects of physics is this. It says you start with a hypothesis. A belief system. It's a belief system, including quantum, whatever. It's a belief system. You start with atoms, whatever. Then it says, see if it is well joined up system of thought. First of all, make sure it's not kind of weird with things hanging out. So first, take on a hypothesis which is self kind of contained. Then the final step in physics is to experiment. They say, don't believe just because it's a good articulation, a good theory, doesn't mean it's true. See if it works out in reality. The same is true in the spiritual journey. You start with the belief system. Mr. Lakhani saying, spirit, what spirit? It seems sensible, perhaps sounds sensible, not good enough. You are quite right. Never sit on that, otherwise you don't make any progress. Our traditions insist that you must take it to its conclusion. First, an encounter. You heard the film Encounters of the Third Kind. This is called Encounters of the First Kind. You come face to face with your true self, your true nature. So the only way this can be validated is not by your prophet. In the ancient days, prophet experience, good for him, no good for me. It was written in the textbooks, the revelation, and that's not good enough for me. The only way you can validate this idea about spirituality that we all belong to, or we all kind of embrace, is only through first an encounter. So Annelies, when you encounter it, please let us know. We'll come and sit at your feet.
I will. Yes. Okay, very amazing. Yeah.
And can I let me kind of develop this further. At the
Yeah,
moment,
sure.
when we see the universe, how do we see it? It is subject-object divide. There is the objective world, there's subject, I'm trying to make sense of it, my awareness, my consciousness, in this intermediate, all the 5 senses are telling me what this world is all about. This is how we encounter the universe that we are so sure about, empirical world. The spiritual realm is spiritual experience is dramatically different. Do you know why it's so dramatically different and so kind of thrilling? Here, for the first time, the subject-object divide disappears. There's no divide anymore. That's why the intensity with which you experience the spirit is millionfold higher than the experience that I see you here in this kind of very fuzzy way. So it is very dramatic. It's very dramatic because it's so intense. That's why all the prophets go, ee! They can't help themselves. In the subject-object has disappeared. So they see reality without any intermediary, without any five senses, no empirical requirement. And that is why it's the most thrilling experience. Only those individuals who experience the spirit can talk like this. The subject-object divide disappears. That's why that's what people say, but how can you be sure? Maybe it's a fuzzy thing, maybe you're daydreaming. How do you know? It's not a kind of psychedelic experience. The intensity with which you have spiritual experience is, I would say, millionfold higher than the experience I have by looking at you. It is that dramatic. So it doesn't require validation. It doesn't say, oh, Mr. Lakhani, have I been spiritually ever? Can you know it? You will jump. Yo, I know. Go away.
Yeah, and I feel also maybe when, I mean, getting at that stage of spiritual development maybe requires a little practice, but I feel that once you have this experience, maybe we can actually use it to adjust our hypothesis about the materials as well when we make this, when we make the bridge. Yeah.
Annelies, look, when you told me right at the first sentence you said is, I looked up and said, why something? Don't think it's a minor issue. It shows that you already made tremendous spiritual, I'm not trying to just patronize you. You already made spiritual progress. Oh, because you are smiling, oh, why not? But I think you already hit the jackpot because it is the fact that you recognize existence itself is dramatic. And that's what quantum is saying. The underpinning of reality is not matter, it is existence shuddering. And you said existence, what is existence? So in a way, you are already revealing your spiritual progress when you said, why something? That's the real beginning of a spiritual journey.
Yes.
Existence is the word. Existence.
Existence, yes. What is existence?
It seems like a casual word. It exists. No, it's not casual. When you have spiritual experience, existence that appears like a casual word will hit you in the face. You go, oh, I exist, like that. Existence is central. What exists is secondary. Existence is central. Whatever exists, me, you, is secondary. It's not important. That's the way you get the spiritual experience. You establish yourself into existence rather than what exists.
Yes.
I'm just playing with words. It's serious. It happens when you really are successful.
Yes. It's very, very nice. I'm wondering if we have any questions actually, because people are watching and maybe asking questions.
And at least apart from you and me, who else is watching?
I don't know who is watching. I know some people at least who are watching. I can't see.
It's all right. It's a good chat within two of us.
Sorry, what did you say?
It's good to have a chat within just two of us. It's more private. It's better.
Yes, exactly. We just pretend that nobody else is here. Okay. I don't know if I can ask somebody if there are any questions. I don't get any response, but it's really amazing.
Annelies, we already enlightened the whole audience. Don't worry. No questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe we should just be in the silence and let it resonate.
Yeah, actually, we have general feedbacks that people are spellbound and speechless. So I really thank you very much, and I would have loved to listen more and more to your conversation because it's so fascinating and so enriching and enlightening. Sincerely, it's thank you very much. We could all stay longer, I think, but the time is up. So I would love really to thank you, Mr. Lakhani, for all your sharing with us, and I hope that you will join us in another edition because we need this kind of talks. And thank you so much, Annelies, for your precious questions because you just make it to the point. So thank you from all of us, also in this team, because we really appreciated your intervention. Thank you very much.